Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's OET webinar on the reading part A. I am Dr. Alicia from ProMedicalEnglish.com, one of the premium OET preparation providers. And today I want to first start by welcoming everyone who's signing in. We get people signing in from where I am sitting right now, which is Taipei, Taiwan. From China, welcome. From Japan, welcome. From Australia and New Zealand, thank you for signing in. We hope you find today productive. Those of you who often join us from Namibia, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Saudi Emirates, Egypt, Europe, and North and South America. Welcome, welcome. I hope that today gives you some really good information to help you in your OET journey. So today's focus is going to be on 3 techniques for finding answers fast. And this is important simply because of the challenge of having to be really quick in the reading part A. And for some candidates who take a little longer to orientate themselves and to really settle in, to understand what is going on, developing techniques to really engage quickly and zoom in on what you need. Tips about these topics are very, very helpful. So that's what we're going to focus today. So let's jump in. Oh, before we start, on our website, promedicalenglish.com, you see the link here. We have lots of free resources to help you out of the gate when you're starting with your OET preparation. And one of our free resources is called the OET Reading Coach. This is a free ebook, absolutely free, no obligation. You do not have to pay anything. You do not have to buy anything. You literally just go to this link, download, enter your email in the box that pops up, and the free ebook arrives in your mailbox. What is this ebook? This ebook is like a concise tutorial all about the OET reading, all 3 parts, A, B, and C. It outlines not just the layout of all 3 parts, but what we like to call the pitfalls. These are the little things that you really do have to be careful of and watch out for because they're easy to miss and therefore lose you marks. But we also point out what we call opportunities. If you know and understand how the test is written, there are lots of opportunities for candidates to actually score marks, make use of time, make use of understanding the layout. So we cover those as well. And we do so not just by explaining what they are, excuse me, there is actually a sample reading, part A, B, and C in there, where we break it down by the kinds of questions, the kinds of challenges that often come up, and you can actually see them explained and do examples yourself, okay? And read the commentary, again, about the pitfalls and opportunities, okay? This is just a quick reminder. I will touch on it again, but this is about when we'll be closing and when we'll be reopening in the new year, because we're on holiday as of today, actually, the 19th of December. And the fact that even though some things are closed, you can still do some stuff. But we'll get to that again later. Right now, let's jump right into the reading part A. So just to recap for those of you who are new to the OET, so the reading part A consists of 4 different kinds of texts and questions based on them. These texts, unlike the reading part C, in the reading part A, these are the kinds of texts that you will come across on the ward or in clinical practice in an outpatient clinic when you're actually dealing with a patient. So it could be things about a specific diagnosis. It could be about a treatment protocol or algorithm. It could be about a clinical procedure that you have to do, or it could be, about drug cautions, drug interactions, or something like that. Things that in real life you want to grab quickly and verify as you're dealing there with the patient in ER, stat room, on the ward, OET, whatever. There are 20 questions based on these 4 kinds of text, and they're divided into 3 sections, which you will see today. In section 1, it is very general, global. Where would you find a specific kind of information? In sections 2 and 3, you find and enter detailed information that you find in the text. And it's a duration of 15 minutes that you have to do this. And then the paper is submitted. Okay, and we're going to come back to this point at the end. So you only have a strict 15 minutes to settle in, get focused, find the answers, enter accurately, and get out. All right, good. So a question that you can start asking yourself at this point in the presentation is, what kinds of texts have you encountered on the ward and in patient care? We touched on a few. It might be about a specific diagnosis. It could be a treatment protocol for maybe a person who's had a heart attack, a person who has uncontrolled high blood pressure, a person who's had seizures, or whatever. It could be a clinical procedure, anything from catheterizing a patient, putting in a chest tube, putting in a nasogastric tube to decompress, anything like this. Right? And these are, or it could be about a drug where you're looking at how it's given, the indications for that drug, that is who you should give the drug to, the contraindications, that is who the drug should not be given to, and any kind of other warnings like drug interactions or allergic reactions or so on. All right, so those are the kinds of text or extracts from those you will come across. So what kind of skills are needed in the OET challenge part of it? First of all, quick reading. You've got to be quick. You do not have time to read all 4 texts in detail. So you've got to be able to read very quickly and almost immediately understand what they're talking about, how they're talking about it, and so on. You've also got to be able to recognize restated or rephrased information. So you see some language in the text, you see something in the questions that are in different words, but you realize that these words mean the same as these words, okay? So you've got to have a pretty good vocabulary and understanding of idioms as well. And accurate recording of skills. Again, this is a point that we'll come back to at the end. But here in the reading part A, unlike, for example, in the listening part A, where they're just looking to see if you understand the detail, not so much that you've recorded it accurately. Here in the reading, accurately recording what you find from the text is very, very important. Kind of like the writing as well, OET writing subtests. So what essential techniques again? Skimming, being able to quickly read, scanning, being able to zoom in and pick out those details very quickly, and the ability to keep a calm head, because often students would tell me that under pressure, the brain just freezes, what I like to call a brain fart. The brain just freezes and they stop processing things. And this is where practice comes in, because you've got to be able to almost be coldly clinical Go in, don't panic, don't miss details. Find that detail and record it accurately. Because if you write 24 mil per minute, if this is in the text, 24 mil per minute, and in your panic, you put 24 liters per minute, that's wrong. Or it's sodium 136 milliequivalents per liter, and you put sodium 156 milliequivalents per liter as the test result. That's inaccurate. So accuracy is very important, and as I said, a good vocabulary. So let's now look at an example of what a reading part A may look like. So here's just an example of a reading text A, B, C, and D. Okay, you see here, it's always a common topic. So the four texts always relate to a single topic. And here, as you can see, fractures, fractures, well, this is related to fractures, fractures. So here on this paper, it's all about fractures. So tip one we're going to look at is speedy engagement. Okay, so what do we mean when we talk about speedy engagement? We're talking about instantly recognizing what the topic is and what kind of language to expect. Because after all, if it's about fractures, you're going to expect different language, from example, from if it's about depression. Okay? So how can you help yourself engage speedily with this, especially since you don't get to read in detail? If you invest time, unless you are one of, the rare people who can read speedily and absorb immediately, you don't have time for reading in detail. But the good news is you don't have to read in detail to do well in this paper. Okay? So you've got to be able to skim and scan, or a good tip number one to do is to skim the first line or two of each text. And as you do, you're asking yourself the basic question, what is this text telling me about? Basically, what kind of text is this? And then have the ability to sum it up in your own words. Why take time to do this instead of just getting on with the answer? Because this is about having information in working memory right at your fingertips, as opposed to digging from scratch, trying to kind of orientate yourself. It doesn't sound like much, but we're talking about cutting off, seconds of being able to answer every question. And when you do that over 20 questions under pressure, you're talking about saving a minute, over a minute of time, which is important when time is such a big element. Okay. So taking a look at these texts, see if you can sum up. What kind of text is text A? It starts off saying, fractures often occur following, okay? Dislocation is where a sprain is. How would you sum that up? Simple fracture of limbs, text B, it starts with immediate management, halt any external hemorrhage. In clinical assessment, obtain complete patient history, perform standard clinical observation, perform physical examination, and then you see examine, check whether. Notice, I'm not reading everything in detail. And then management, splint the site, elevate the limb, administer analgesics. How would you sum up what that's about? Let's go over to text C. Drug treatment protocol. Well, that's an easy and straightforward one. It tells you in the title what it's about. But just a quick scan here, you're seeing it. tells you the drugs, it tells you dosages even, lots of details, and there's some stuff written here, respiratory depression, so it's talking about some negative stuff as well. How would you summarize that? And again here, same thing. It tells you right at the beginning, technique for back slab. But is it just a general do's and don'ts, or is it detail? Measure a length, wrap cotton padding, immerse the layer, do not apply pressure, wrap crepe. This is a step-by-step, step-by-step, not just a do's and don'ts, a step-by-step procedure, okay? So what you can do, and yes, you can scribble some notes on the text booklet. It doesn't matter. You can scribble on the text booklet. OET is not going to look at it and mark it. They're only interested in your answers. Yeah. But what you can do then is, having quickly scanned definitions, causes, and kinds. So you go text A, what text A is about. For me, I put definition, causes, and kinds. Then I went to text B, and I quickly skim that, and I go first response, assessment, and stabilization. Now, these are just my words that I use because, you know, it's a familiar trigger for me. You will have words that work for you. But for me, first response, assessment, stabilization. Here, because of all the information I saw here, I put drug and drug warnings, because I saw the drug dosages here and I saw the warning down here about things that can go horribly wrong. And then text, D. From reading, I realized, well, from skimming, sorry, I realized, oh, this is a step-by-step procedure or technique. Okay. This, with practice, you should probably be able to do this in a minute or less. Yes, I know that sounds fast, but again, with practice, okay? If you need to, you can take 2 minutes, but you do not want to be dwelling on this for 4 and 5 minutes. Okay, you've got 20 questions. You need to get on it. So let's take a look at the kinds of skills in a little bit more detail, okay? This first section only needs the location, A, B, C, or D only. You do not have to put in any detail here. Just decide where it is and you put in the letter only. So what's a good tip? Tip number 2, this helps you by helping you to look out for rephrasing. Now, why is rephrasing important? Because often the language in these questions is stated in a different way. It uses synonyms, okay? So as you look here and as you start to answer these questions, don't, for example, just go procedures for delivering pain relief. You're not, and expect you will find exactly that in the text. Chances are you won't. If you're lucky, sometimes you do, but often you don't. Okay, so you ask yourself, what other words mean the same as pain relief? Take a second, think about that. Look at question 2. The procedure to follow when splinting a fractured limb. Ask yourself, what kind of words mean the same, or terms mean the same as procedure to follow? Let's try question 6. Oops, here. What to look for when checking an inquiry. So ask yourself, what other ways can you say check an inquiry? And what you're trying to do here, again, is to dig up all the knowledge you have that is sleeping there in your dormant memory and bringing it right up to working memory. As if some person said to you breakfast and immediately a whole bunch of vocabulary jumps into your head without you having to hear the next words that they say. So that's what you're doing. You're getting your brain to preempt already just reading the question. Okay? So for me, preempting, I see delivering pain relief, and I start thinking language like giving painkiller, giving analgesia, or administering analgesia. We're not saying that these are the exact words that you definitely will find, but what happens is you have started a process in your brain. You have cranked the engine. The car isn't moving yet, but you have cranked the engine. The car is ready to move and move fast. Okay? What other words for procedure to follow? So I'm thinking immediately procedure, protocol, technique, steps. And what other words for check an injury, assess, review, examine, examination? Immediately, all of those words, those synonyms jump into my brain. All right. So let's try answering the question then. Where would I find then for question 1? Where would I find information about procedures for delivering pain relief? And I've got all these different things in my head. And when I go to the text here, what am I looking for? Pain relief, where do they talk about pain relief, painkillers, analgesia? Well, I know they talk about it in part C. I also know that they talk about it in part B. Okay, because management down here also has analgesia. So, but which do they want? Do they want part text B or do they want part text C? What's the question? The question is procedures for delivering. So what's another word for delivering? Administering, giving. Does anything talk about administering or giving drugs? Boom. Right here, root of administration. Your answer is C. Okay, good. Let's try a different example. Oops, sorry. Let's look at number 2. Other words for procedure to follow. The procedure to follow for what? When splinting a fractured limb. So in procedure to follow, I was thinking protocol, technique, steps. Now here's protocol. Okay, so they talk about a protocol here, but they also talk about a technique here. So it could be C or it could be D. But what exactly are they asking about? They're asking about splinting a fractured limb. And here we have it. So your answer to question 2 is D. Okay. So at this point in the video, pause it, because unfortunately today we couldn't do it live. Pause it and try to tackle question 6 as an example. What to look for when checking an injury. And remember, we said other synonyms: assess, review, examine. So which text is talking about assessing, reviewing, or examining an injury? And if you took B, then you're correct. The answer is B. Okay, good. Let's move on to the second section, the other type of questions you have, 8 to 14 or so. They ask you a question, and in this one, they want you to put in detailed information. Okay? Now here, you've got to be aware of rephrasing, somewhat, but here also of context. All right? Because you're looking for this detailed bit of information. One thing to remember, you don't need to put in long sentences. All they want is a word or a very short phrase. Usually it's like a maximum of 4 words. Do not waste time putting in long sentences. Don't. It wastes time. Okay? So where do you find the word elevate? So let's look at question 8. What should be used to elevate a patient's fractured leg. Now, where do you find the word elevate and something to do with a patient's fractured leg? Now, elevating a patient's fractured leg, you're already thinking, well, if you're talking about elevating a fractured leg, we're talking about actual procedure of management. So I've got to look in the context of where they're talking about procedures for management, okay? And elevating a limb. Now, again, we find that there are two different places where they're talking about steps to actually go through. We've got D, where you're putting on a back slab, and we've got B, where they're actually breaking down the procedure for both first response assessment and management, for all three, okay? But where do they talk about elevating? So this, first of all, is arm fractures, but they also say leg fractures. So do they actually talk about elevating or raising anything here? Not so much. No. Do they talk about it here? We see elevate the limb. And here's the thing about limb. Limb can be leg or arm, upper limb or lower limb. So this is fine. A sling for arm injuries, a pillow for leg injuries. Okay, so the answer here for question 8 is pillow. All right, let's look at 10. Where do you find the word padding? What's the question? Which parts of the limb may need extra padding? Okay, again, a limb. Okay, they're going to be talking about leg or foot. Okay, and what needs extra padding? Okay, extra support, extra buffer, but where would you find the word padding or something that sounds like padding in the context of dealing with a limb? Okay, so where do they actually talk about padding? Well, they didn't talk about it here. Here is where they talk about padding. Right? So they're not talking about just regular padding, they're talking about extra padding. So we see the word padding here, wrap cotton padding over the top, blah, blah, blah. But this is talking about padding, not extra padding. Where do we see extra padding? Extra padding can be applied over bony prominences if applicable. So the answer to number 10 is bony prominences. Oops, okay. So that's how you have to think about it, not just paraphrasing, but also context of the question. All right, don't just take one word, take the whole context of the question. So let's now look at the third section. Our next tip is pretty much the same, just an extension. Here again, you have to be aware of rephrasing as well as context. And the layout of the last 5 or 6 questions is usually a little different. Instead of asking a question and you have to provide the answer cold on its own, here you basically complete the sentence, but still it's the same thing. You still need detailed information. So you have to be aware that this language around this blank space is going to be rephrased. So, falling on an outstretched limb. Well, the minute you see that, by now you are familiar with the different kinds of information in all 4 texts. So you hear falling on an outstretched hand, you remember there's a text that deals with causes. So you're already thinking, I'm going to go straight to A first. I may need to look somewhere else, but I'm going to go straight to A first. And a typical cause of. So Where do you find language similar or related to a cause of A? First, rephrasing. What other bits of language mean the same thing as cause of A? Results in, results from, causes, cause of A, consequence can be. Again, you're not definitely sure that's the language, but you're already priming your brain to look for those words. And the context is falling on a hand, causes, so we're going to look. So let's take a brief look. Oh, okay. Well, let's move on since we're here. Then we'll go back and do the question. Question 18, coming down here. Increasing in size. Again, what language could mean the same as increasing in size? Enlarge, swollen, bigger or get bigger. As soon as you see increasing in size, that's what you think about. What's the context? Check to see whether swollen limbs are something or increasing in size. Check to see. Context. Check to see. We already said, checking is about assessment. It's about examining. It's about reviewing to see, So we know that there's a text already that deals with assessment and reviewing. Okay, so let's go and see. Let's try 15. Cause of A, let's review again. I myself have forgotten. Falling on an outstretched hand is a typical cause of A. And we said we'll look in A. Where do we see falling on an outstretched hand? Boom, falling on an outstretched hand. Okay, so let's read around just to make sure, because sometimes, as we saw before, the answer could possibly be in two places. So it often results from injuries away from the affected joint, example, elbow dislocation after falling on an outstretched hand. So the answer here is dislocation of the elbow. Dislocation is what you're writing here. 18, increasing in size. We said enlarged, swollen, or bigger. Let's look at the context. Check to see whether swollen limbs are something or increasing in size. We know that around here is where there was a lot of assessment. We may need to look someplace else, but we'll go here first. So check whether examine is getting bigger. And there we see something that means the same as enlarge, getting bigger or swollen. So we're going to check to see if the limb, if swollen, is throbbing or getting bigger. So the answer here is throbbing. Yep. Okay. So at this point, what you can do is, if you're watching this after it has been published, what you can do is pause the video, go back and try to do the tests that we have not done, the questions that I have not covered in this presentation. Okay. So coming to our last and important tip, when you think you have found your answer, read around to confirm. You saw that I did it just now a couple of times. You saw that sometimes it could be in B, but also in C, or sometimes in C and also in D. So when you think you found the answer, read around to be sure that you're looking the same place, because in one of them, question 13, they talked about morphine, but morphine, the actual drug, is mentioned in both B and C. But what is the context of the question? What analgesic should be used to give a patient who is allergic to morphine? And where do they actually talk about allergy? Actually, it's not C, it's here. And the answer we see here, if allergic to morphine, use fentanyl. So the answer is fentanyl. Okay. So essential reading A skills needed for speed is a combination, actually. You've got to be familiar with a wide range of reading materials, so you immediately go, oh, okay, that's that kind of information. You've got to be a relatively fast reader, be able to summarize, skim, scan, and understand context. And to think, you might be thinking, oh, I can't do those things. Nothing comes without practice. So how I advise my students is the first time you start doing these papers, so the first time you start doing these papers, I advise my students is don't look at the clock. Work on your technique first. Work on your technique for summarizing, for skimming, for scanning, for looking for rephrasing as well as context. And once you get a rhythm of how you read and how you zoom in on answers, then work on building speed. So technique first, get a rhythm, and then speed will come from that. And always remember, when you think you found your answer, just read around very, very quickly. And the last tip, of course, is to enter your answer accurately. Accurately. Okay. So at this point, I'm just going to go through a few frequently asked questions that I get in live webinars. And the first is usually, will I have time to go back and review part A after I've finished? The answer is no. You get part A separately. Once that 15 minutes is up, the paper is taken away from you if you're doing a paper-based, or the system closes if you are doing a computer-based test. And then you get part B and C, and there is no opportunity to go back and review your reading part A answers. Is spelling important? In this case, yes. In the reading part A, spelling is important because it is related to accuracy. Because as you know, in healthcare, often, sometimes even drugs have similar names. Suppose I use capital letters instead of common letters, like M capital L instead of M small l. Well, here the information, as long as the number that goes before it is the same, so this shouldn't be a problem. But there's some people, and this is actually a pretty common one I come across, is suppose I do the third section first and get all the answers, and then I go back and do the first section where you just need the A, B, C, or D. Honestly, that depends on your personal learning style. But I will say this, the reading part A is created the way it's created as an opportunity to help you to go faster and be accurate. So I would say if you've got enough time, try it both ways, see which one works better for you. Okay, but the OET reading A is written the way it's written for a reason. And what will happen if I keep writing after they say stop writing? The rules and regulations of OET are very strict. If they say stop writing, stop writing. Or you can get what they call a first and final warning, or in a worst case scenario, your paper could be confiscated, which means your marks are held and you either have to do OET all over again, or in extreme cases, you're banned from doing OET. Okay, so follow the regulations carefully. Okay. Right, so that's it for the main part of my presentation. Remember, for OET, not just reading, not just part A, but all of the reading subtests, you can check out our absolutely free resource at promedicalenglish.com/resources. Again, no obligation, just go and download it, honestly. and it has in a lot of valuable information and practice. It also helps you to understand the kinds of questions that can come. And another free resource we want to let you know about is our blog. Now, why our blog? What we have done with our blog is something a little different. Our blog is not just about telling you about OET events or new. We have actually turned our blog into a free learning resource, especially for OET reading skills, for grammar, and for writing skills. Okay. Listening, we also have, and speaking, we also have, but what we do is we have articles about real topics, some general health topics, some are topics as you would find in, for example, even the reading part C. And then after the text, which usually is between about 800 and 1,000 words, again, just like in the OET reading part C, then we actually use those texts for exercises, be it vocabulary exercises, as you see here, or identifying opinion and attitude, which is something that would be common in the reading part C or the listening part C, and other kinds of themes. It could be grammar building, it could be inference, it could be gist, or it could be, idioms. Okay. So it's just something a little different we've done with our blog. Again, it's free. You just go open the blog. You can do it for self-study, or if there are any teachers watching, you can use it, use our blog for lesson plans. Okay. And that's it for me today. Okay. I hope that this presentation has been helpful for you. Just a reminder that Pro Medical English, we're closed from today, December the 19th, until the 4th of January, and that is for live tutoring and writing correction submissions and returns. Well, sorry, writing correction returns. However, you can still submit any writing corrections you have. Unfortunately, you won't get them back until the 4th. You can download the free resources that I just talked about and more. You can continue to register for any course and do your self-access courses, your intensive writing course, your listening, your reading, whatever. You just log in, go into your account and just start your self-access course. And of course, you can register for anything. Just also a reminder, 25% discount on all courses from the 9th of December. So it started already. It's been going on until the 4th of January. So take advantage. And that is it. Thank you very much. And for those of you who celebrate this time of year, I want to say Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and for my Asian, I can say neighbors now, for whom the Chinese New Year is coming up in January, have a wonderful, wonderful Chinese New Year. Bye-bye.